The first one is Questionnaire by Wendell Berry. How much poison are you willing to eat for the success of the free market and global trade? Please name your preferred poisons. For the sake of goodness, how much evil are you willing to do? Fill in the blanks with the names of your favorite evils and acts of hatred. What sacrifices are you prepared to make for culture and civilization? Please list the monuments, shrines, and works of art you would most willingly destroy. In the name of patriotism and the flag, how much of our beloved land are you willing to desecrate? List in the following spaces the mountains, rivers, towns, farms you could most readily do without. State briefly the ideas, ideals, or hopes, the energy sources, the kinds of security for which you would kill a child. Name, please, the children you would be willing to kill. I want to draw attention to the triptych over here on the table and give thanks to Amy Schwartz. Hey, Amy. She works at the Frick Museum, and so this is just a beautiful triptych she put together for, what about the children. And having been raised Catholic, it reminds me of altarpieces. And I don't know whether you meant that way, you're nodding, yeah. There's something about, the remembrances that we have. And so please come up and take a look at it, because it shows the cots on the floor, children who had to sleep on the floor. It shows the Statue of Liberty. It shows in such beautiful and graphic form, what we experienced this summer. And lest we forget, it's still going on. We all watched this summer. This summer we watched as a group of children was trapped in and subsequently rescued from a flooded cave in Thailand, while another group was separated from their parents at the southwest border of the United States and held hostage to a cruel immigration policy called, quote, zero tolerance, close quote. A New Yorker cartoon captured the contrast by depicting children in a detention cage in Texas, watching the rescue in Thailand on television. Could there be a more jarring contrast? This morning, I will provide you with both statistics and stories, and some marching orders. We all watched from June 23rd, when 12 members of the Wild Boar soccer team, aged 11 to 16 years, and their coach were trapped in the Tam Luang caves by monsoon rains that came on July 2nd. They came, and on July 2nd, British divers found them on a rocky ledge, and one Navy SEAL from Thailand died in that rescue from lack of oxygen. On July 10th, they had all been rescued and reunited with their parents, who had kept a constant vigil outside the caves, praying for their safe return. Hundreds of experts had been flown in from around the world to help, and divers described the treacherous conditions in that 4-kilometer passage that took hours to traverse. Nagasuk Kasop, a diver for the Electric Engineering Authority in Thailand, said, "This is the hardest mission we've ever done. Every step of the extraction is risky. I'm quite emotional as a father. Everybody has this feeling because we feel like it's our children inside the cave. Our children." I tried to imagine the devastation that drives parents to risk their lives and their children's lives to escape from the violence in their home countries, only to arrive here and be treated as criminals. Now, they have broken a law, but they are seeking asylum. So they're not criminals. They're people hoping for better lives for themselves and, more importantly, for their children. What I cannot imagine is the trauma that their children experience. But Commander Jonathan White of the U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps, he can certainly imagine it, because he in the Office of Refugee Resettlement told the Trump administration last year, and I'm quoting him, "There's no question that separating children from parents entails significant potential for traumatic psychological injury to the child." And what was the administration's response to that advice? "Oh, family separation isn't a policy of ours." But in fact, it was. On April 6, Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced the zero tolerance policy, and he directed federal prosecutors to criminally prosecute all adult migrants entering the country illegally. Now, this policy resulted in separation because children cannot be held in a detention facility with their parents. Nevertheless, 5 days later, Homeland Security Kristen Nielsen testified that there was no policy calling for such separation. And Sessions later suggested that children were being smuggled and stated, "If you are smuggling a child, then we will prosecute you, and that child will be separated from you as required by law." In May, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly was defending the separation as a necessary evil and a tough deterrent. What's happened since then? Well, here are the latest numbers. I just have to sort of take a moment and shake my head, because the story doesn't get any better. Like some of you, I'm on Facebook, and probably too much. And on my timeline, because I like the ACLU, every day I get this blast from the ACLU saying, how many days has it been since the judge ordered children to be reunited with their parents? So the notice I got today was 45 days past that time. So it's been about 2 months since the U.S. District Court Judge Dana Sabro ordered the U.S. government to reunite the families. And here's a status update as of Thursday, according to the government. The government said of the 2,654 separated migrant children, 2,181 have been, quote, discharged, close quote, meaning that they were either reunified with their parents or placed with a sponsor within the United States under other circumstances, such as the child turning 18 years old. So, as of September 4th, and this is according to the ACLU, whose figures I trust, 416 children remain separated from their parents. This is about 80 fewer than the previous week. Of those 416 children, 14 are under the age of 5. Under the age of 5 years. You probably have heard that the government actually thinks that if you're 5 years old and younger, you can represent yourself in a court of law. I actually heard a judge say, I saw this on television, that he believed that he could explain the law sufficiently to a 3-year-old, so that the 3-year-old could represent herself in his court. just leave that with you. That's what they think. So, the parents of 304 children are located outside the United States, either because they were deported or because they sent their children to the United States with other family members. Both the United States and the American Civil Liberties Union have been focusing on their efforts on resolving these cases. But of course, how do you reach them? And I think you might have heard, or you read the tweet, that our president thinks that that's not the job of his administration, that that's not the job of the U.S. government, that that's the job of the ACLU. Well, it's not the job of the ACLU, but nonetheless, they have gone to Guatemala looking for those parents. Nonetheless. So, here's what we have. About 304 parents who are outside the United States. About 199 belong to parents who indicate a desire against reunification. Why? They're afraid that if their children come back home and they're reunited with them, they will join the gangs there, that they will have no choice but to join the gangs. They're safer in the United States without their parents. And of course, the United States has given a number of these adults red flags. Some of them are their background checks, some of them they are concerning safety and well-being. Another category of a red flag for adults is parentage, whether or not they're real parents or not. So the ACLU is particularly concerned, as you might imagine, about all of these red flag cases. And what they're doing is looking into them. Here's one case. ACLU is particularly concerned about a 4-year-old whose mother was denied reunification because of an outstanding foreign warrant that says she, the mother, is a gang member. The mother has denied this allegation. At her immigration bond hearing, the immigration judge expressly found that this warrant was not sufficient evidence that the mother was a danger to the community. But because of her supposed criminal history, the United States has denied reunification with her child, who was only 3 when he was first detained and is now 4 years old. I'm sure you have read some of the stories about parents who were finally reunited with their children. But as the U.S. official warned the Trump administration, there is trauma involved. And so the Atlantic Monthly has done a very poignant story about just one of those cases, a mother and child who've been reunited, and he was separated from her for about 3 months and didn't recognize her. And during the time he was away from her, he was taking in all the messages that were given to him by the people in the shelter. Chief among them was don't touch, don't touch. Don't touch things and don't touch people. They weren't hugged. These children were not held and comforted and hugged. So when his mother held out her arms, hoping that her child would run into them and she could embrace him, he held back. Don't touch. Don't touch. This is what we have done. The child is suffering greatly in detention. I'm going back to the other story now, and is at particular risk. In a second case, a father was denied reunification with his 2-year-old son. The U.S. appeared to base its decision on the father's criminal history. The ACLU said it was aware of a guilty plea that he had made back in 2010, but that has no bearing on his current dangerousness or ability to care for his child. Why is the government doing this? So, Lee Gelernt, and Gelernt is his last name. It's wonderful. In German, Lernen, Gelernt, is somebody who is wise, somebody who is studious, a scholar. And certainly Lee Gelernt has become a scholar. And recently he was actually in Guatemala. He's a senior lawyer for the ACLU, and he was a long way from the San Diego Federal Courthouse, where he's been wrestling with the U.S. government for much of the summer. But he was in Guatemala looking for parents. He said, "I can't remember a time when we had to go out in the field and find our class members all over the world. This is a highly unusual situation. I never expected to be in Guatemala looking for parents." So the ACLU and Guatemalan immigrant advocates are fanning out across the country to find dozens of parents who were deported from the U.S. without their children. And the challenge is huge, huge. They face long distances, tortuous geography, and often no cell phones. And of course, meanwhile, these children are thousands miles away from home and their parents in U.S. custody. Well, before he got to Guatemala, Gelernt and his colleagues had convinced federal judge Dana Sabro to order the government to reunite the kids, and that's why we have this count every day. And so they're now there scouring the volcanic highlands of the most populous Central American republic, Guatemala, trying to reach parents and explain to them their rights and present them with a wrenching decision. They are facing a profound decision on whether to have their child be brought back to them to this country or leave the child in the country, in this country, to independently pursue asylum. That's the decision that Lee Gelernt puts to each one of these parents when he finds them. Do you want us to reunite you with your child, to bring your child back here, or do you want to release them and have them pursue a case for asylum on their own? 80 parents have still not been found. They're still hunting for them. As Judge Sabro warned, for every child who is not located, there will be a permanently orphaned child. They have no idea what's going on. And some of them have not yet talked to a public official or a social worker. Some of them who were reached said that they had signed papers because they were told, sign this paper. But they were never told what was in the paper. So, as Gelernt says, we believe they were coerced or misled or outright confused about what they were signing and what they were giving up. I have no doubt about that. So many of them are deciding not to have their children returned because it is simply too dangerous. And as Gelernt said, we've had very difficult conversations with parents this week. As much as they want to be with their child, and it's heartbreaking, they feel it's too dangerous. They felt that their children would be recruited by violent gangs, and in addition, some children, fortunately, do have relatives in the United States, so they are unlikely to end up in foster care. But that is the situation before us. On Thursday of this week, the Trump administration said that it plans to withdraw from the federal court agreement that strictly limits the conditions under which authorities can detain migrant children, and it has proposed new rules, it said, would enable it to detain minors during their immigration proceedings. In other words, they want to keep them locked up indefinitely. This is a proposed change to upend the Flores Agreement in 1997. So you will be hearing a lot about the Flores Agreement if you haven't already. It's a consent decree decree that says that migrant children cannot be kept in jail-like settings and prohibits them from being held for more than 20 days. This is the agreement that the government now wants to change so that they can be held in detention facilities. And according to my favorite Homeland Security Secretary, Kristen Nielsen, this will close up a legal loophole. What she says is, quote, one of the primary pull factors for illegal immigration, close quote. The way the Trump administration sees it, migrant adults bring children with them across the border because they know they, the children, can't be held in detention for very long. So this would change that. This would say that they may be kept for a longer time, and that maybe that will deter them. Would that deter any of you? If you were living in a situation like that, if you knew that your children were likely to be either recruited by a gang or to be killed by one, would that deter you because you now hear that they can hold on to them longer? First of all, how would you even hear about it? And then if you knew about it, I think you'd still take the risk. You would still take that risk because you love your child. And you don't want your child to die too young. Under the proposed change, the feds would be able to hold families together, they'd be together, during the entirety of their immigration cases. And they believe that that would satisfy the basic purpose of the Flores settlement by treating all children in custody with, quote, dignity, respect, and special concern for their particular vulnerability as minors, close quote. But guess what? They're going to keep them in facilities that maybe don't meet the same standards that a state might, or that some other, or that we might have. That's one way that they're able to have more facilities available for this, is that those facilities will not meet those high standards. Well, the judge overseeing the Flores statement, U.S. District Judge Dolly G., has shown little willingness to change that agreement. When the Justice Department recently made a similar attempt to hold children for longer than 20 days, she rejected it, calling the move, I love her word, cynical. I think there are a lot of words we come up with on what this is. So once again, we are in this situation where, thank goodness for the courts. Thank goodness for the courts, right? We have three branches of this government, which those of us who were fortunate enough to learn civics growing up know about. Right? The executive, the legislative, the judicial. Many of our children don't even learn civics anymore. They don't know about those three branches. But I think these children are going to know about it because they know that their lives were saved and they were held together with their families because of the judicial branch. Because the judicial branch takes our Constitution seriously. Well, I'm going to stop ranting right now about all the things that are terrible about this government and instead move into something that I hope will give us also hope. And that is what's happening. And so, I've got these little feathers all over here. Let's see if I can find the right feather I'm looking for. Yes, here we go. Grannies respond. How many of you were watching the Grannies this summer, right? Weren't they spectacular? So, the Grannies got together and they said, and this is from their Facebook page, we are Grannies on a mission. We are outraged by this cruel and inhumane way our government is treating immigrant children and their families who have risked all to find refuge from violence and oppression. And so what they have done, what they did, was they set out in a bus on on July 31st from New York City to take a 6-day road trip down to Texas. And all along the way, they were meeting with people in all the cities, taking photographs, sending them, and everybody who wasn't going was cheering them on. And on Monday, August 6th, they reached their border destination in Texas. I'm going to read some of their demands. We demand the immediate reunion of children with their families. Children do not belong in cages and internment camps. We demand the end of family detention. Children and families deserve due process, not indefinite imprisonment. We will not be quiet while little ones are crying alone without the love of a parent to soothe them. We will not remain idle while tent cities are built to indefinitely detain families seeking safe haven in our country. Our demands are clear and not negotiable. Reunite families, end family detention, and end zero humanity. There's another group of people who have been taking a stand, and they are the authors of children's books. And they're selling more books than ever, and they are taking a stand. When photos first came out of migrant children separated from their parents and placed in these giant cages and detention centers, 2 young adult novelists, Melissa de la Cruz and Margaret Stoll, had an immediate response. After texting 9 author friends about what they would do collectively, they got together and drafted a statement. And that statement is Kid Lit says no kids in cages. And it's just brilliant. And so they have reached out to other authors, and it says Kid Lit says no to kids in cages. As members of the children's book industry, we have built careers with teen and young readers around the world. We jointly and strongly condemn the inhumane treatment of immigrant children evidenced by the U.S. Department of Justice. We believe that innocent children should not be separated from their parents. We believe the Zero Tolerance Directive by Sessions is cruel, immoral, and outrageous. And they go on. And what they have done is they have put their own books up for people to buy. The proceeds will go to Kids in Need of Defense and other organizations to provide the attorneys that they need, because I don't care what that judge says, my children weren't ready to defend themselves in front of me at 3 years old. They certainly can't defend themselves in front of a judge at 3. They need attorneys.
There's hope. You have to look for it, but there is hope. So we need to stay up on all the news that's happening because it changes daily. The US government on Thursday and Friday was trying to push through these regulations. The judge is standing in the way, so it's not likely to happen. But they'll keep trying. And these children will still be here, some without their parents, some without their parents' knowledge, but some with their parents' blessing. So, there's so much more to say, but I'm going to leave it there because I think there's only so much misery that we can take in. And I know that we empathize a great deal, and I know that we want to do something. So those marching orders are stay apprised of everything that's happening because the situation changes from day to day. Make contributions to the ACLU, to Kids in Need of Defense, because they are in need of defense. And be kind. So, the closing poem, which you also have, is one that I've shared with you before. And it's by Naomi Shihab Nye. And it's called Shoulders. A man crosses the street in rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south because his son is asleep on his shoulder. No car must splash him. No car drive too near to his shadow. This man carries the world's most sensitive cargo, but he's not marked. Nowhere does his jacket say, fragile, handle with care. His ear fills up with breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. We are not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. Thank you.